Hi everyone, welcome back to Business in the Bowl podcast. Long time no see. I'm your host, Melliere, and today we're interviewing Miss Lori Melliere, and she's the founder of Paper Mill Creative. Today we're going to be talking about her journey, what led her to start, and how she makes her art and the entire process. So if you're interested, make sure you grab a snack, sit back, and relax because this is going to be a good episode to watch and one you don't want to miss. Let's get straight into it. All right. So thank you so much for joining me this morning, Lori. How are you?
Good. Very excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem. And so for our first question, I also kind of like to ask everyone this. Can you tell me the story behind the founding of Paper Mill Creative as a brand?
Sure, of course. So I started Paper Mill Creative with a friend back in 2018. So it's been a minute. And both of us, we had we had gone through library school at UNC. We had met there. Both of us were like several years into our careers as librarians
Mhm.
in different kinds of roles, which was great. But both of us were wanting just kind of a creative outlet, something of our own, something to just try on the side. And so she kind of approached me about starting a business together. And yeah, we jumped in. She eventually decided to quit. I bought her out, took it full time a few years later, but that's kind of the how things started. We both wanted to Paper Mill Creative to be created on art that's really um, centered on like celebrating the local community and neighborhoods and really dig into that. So that's kind of where it got started, and it's just grown and evolved since then.
All right. Thank you so much for that explanation more into like the story. I thought it was really interesting to hear because I knew that you were like a librarian at UNC before you started this business, but I didn't know you had actually started with a friend. So that was something really interesting
Yeah,
to hear again.
yeah. It was a friend that I'd met in library school, and both of us like had worked really well on projects together there, and so we thought we could kind of take that out into sort of the real world.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so that kind of leads into my next question. What kind of inspired you guys to start a business focused on like watercolor arts and gifts? Like, what was the reasoning behind that?
Yeah. So had um, I had always been kind of an artsier person, right? I took art classes all through high school. But I was at a point where I was just, doing my job and, in my career and I wasn't making much art anymore. And I think one cool thing about starting Paper Mill Creative is I was making art again. Like it was just the thing that I wanted to be doing. Um, and so it was actually sort of became an outlet for me. And what was nice for me was a business kind of having a business kind of gave me constraints to work within creatively.
Mhm.
Um, I think I've always been a little intimidated by just like facing down a blank canvas with like no prompt or purpose in mind. Like I know some artists thrive with that. I am not that person. So it gave me purposes, deadlines, like things to kind of work towards and build artistically, which was really helpful for me as an artist. And I know that not every artist is that way, but I am, for better or for worse.
I love how this gave you the opportunity to start creating art again. I know a lot of people, especially like in career talk with art, like when people major in art, they're like, oh, like you're not going to make any money. And a lot of people have to put that passion to the side to pick a career. So I find it really inspiring how you were able to kind of like use it as an outlet and to start creating again. And now it's like your job and it's what you get to do.
Yeah, and it kind of came as like a surprise to me, I think.
Mhm.
I growing up, yeah, I was really into art in my art classes and things. I remember I toured an art college, but decided that that was not for me. Um, and I didn't have examples of people owning small businesses. I did not have examples for sure of people taking their art and being able to live from that for
Yeah.
sure. I did not have those examples. And I think what's cool now is we live in a time where there are a lot more examples of that.
Mhm. And going back to the art that you created, again, it's like an outlet, and you've been involved in art for a really long time. So I bet that you've made multiple different pieces. But I kind of wanted to ask you, like, what products that you sell in your art pieces, which ones are you most proud of and why? Okay.
Okay, so which pieces am I most proud of? Yeah, so just to give just like a quick overview for what I make for people who haven't seen my work, I work in watercolor, I work in pen and ink, I do some digital artwork, and my art primarily just celebrates the architecture, the history, the nature of the places that we live in. So I'm really focused on, so I make art prints, tea towels, stickers, magnets that are focused on, historical architecture, landmarks, but it's very detailed. I love digging into the details. I love doing a lot of research beforehand. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do and capture with my art. So some of my pieces within my product line that I'm most proud of is gosh, I really love my native plants and I just released a native birds collection, a birds of North Carolina collection that I'm really proud of, because I am also just interested in those things. And so I loved making those. And a lot of my artwork is focused on like the built environment, the architecture. But I really love painting like botanicals and landscapes and things too. Um, and then actually one of my favorite pieces I have right here, I'll show you, is not something I sold. I sell in my product line, but it is, I think maybe my technically best piece is a picture of Sanibel Island in Florida, that I just really love.
Whoa,
That's one of my
that's
favorites. It's very different from the products that I sell, but pretty proud of that one.
amazing. It's so good.
Yeah. So I really, even though it's not currently kind of in my product lines, I really do love painting more landscapey things too. And maybe I'll find a way eventually to kind of also merge that interest.
And yeah, I've seen a lot of your botanical artwork and it's really good. And I can imagine because you do so many different types of artwork that there are a lot of processes involved. So I'm gonna kind of mix these two questions in
Mhm.
one. But what is your creative process like when developing new products and how do you decide which products to sell and
Yeah, that's a really great question.
create?
So, my creative process is really heavy on the process. I do a lot of r- research. I do a lot of a lot of my artwork, like I said, is kind of focused on like the built environment, kind of these collages of all these different pieces of architecture. I research what is, important to the environment and the community. I um I go to those places. Like a lot of my work is based in Durham, but I also have, Boone and Wilmington, things across the state. Um I will make a weekend trip of it and go, get a feel for, like, I know about these buildings already, but what are some of the other small things that make this place feel unique and distinct, that I wouldn't just know from like Google image
Yeah.
searches of these buildings. I want more than that. Um, and then at that point, it is a lot of compositional work, trying to figure out how things will fit together, look good together. Um, so it's a lot of process. I honestly have it's something I'm working on, but I need really kind of more. I wish that I had and need to work on building up a bit more of the creative play.
Yeah.
I I don't thrive there. I don't like I need a lot of focus and attention when I'm creating my work. And I would like to bring in a little bit more creative play into my skill set.
Yeah.
That is just not something that is anyway. So that's kind of a lot of process. Then there's what in terms of what products I carry, or what I decide to carry. I think a lot of it is listening to what people are asking for. Um, I think a lot of it is building. continuing to serve the audience that I have.
Mhm.
Um, I think there was a point in time when my business was a bit less mature, where I thought the way that I would grow would be by growing, just expanding geographically, going into
Yeah.
Georgia and South Carolina and Virginia. But what I've found is that is really just like spreading myself thin, where it's served me better to go a bit deeper and continue to build up products for my community here.
Mhm.
So that's really kind of been a guiding principle. Not to say that I won't ever,
Yeah.
decide that I'd like to go into, try to, but I think that I'm best served by focusing on continuing to
On
serve
your
my audience here. Yeah.
And I just want to touch on something. You said that like you want to focus more on creative play, but I find it really like creative that like you take weekend trips to go to these places and feel it out. Like I've never heard an artist that does that.
It's
And I
cool.
feel
It's
like
a
a
cool
lot of
perk.
yeah, like I feel like a lot of artists like they do kind of like maybe look on maybe not even Google Image, but like Pinterest or something, and they just
Yeah.
like mimic the feel. But like you go there like for yourself, feel it out yourself, and then create work based off of that. And you get to like taste the community that makes something for
Yeah.
me. And I find that like very special. Like again, not many artists do that. Like that is so cool.
Yeah. I think that there's so much to be said for, like, I still, when I'm trying to learn a technique, I will, do a tutorial. I might not share it with the world, but I just need to kind of build in what it feels like to do that technique or whatever. That's great that that exists. But yeah, I think that a really special thing about running an art business is getting the space to develop my style and process.
Yeah.
That's a real luxury.
So I know that you are based in Durham, but you do like cater to other parts of the town. Like I saw some of your Boone artwork, and then you were talking about how you gone to Wilmington too. And
Yep.
so how do you see the local market for like art and gifts like evolving like around, not just in Durham, but also in the state? And how do you like cater to that?
Yeah, I think a lot of that is done. So in the past several years, what has made my business really sustainable is building up my wholesale businesses, working with stores to serve kind of that souvenir market, that sort of thing. Um, so I think that again, we're in a great moment where people are interested in shopping and celebrating local. So I'd like to kind of fill that need a bit. Um, and I think that, in Durham, here in Durham, I can participate in a lot of the craft markets, art markets, and things like
Yes.
that, where I'm able to talk to a lot of people and hear their feedback. But for my more remote places, I really depend a lot more on working with wholesale, working with stores. Um, I love working kind of with, I think a thing that I really like about my product line is that I'm able to work not just with like gift shops, but also like museums and libraries and bookstores also really. I think my products appeal to their audiences too.
Mhm.
And I like that about my artwork too. So I really depend on hearing from them about what they want to see too.
Yeah, and you touched on your wholesale business a little bit, and that was actually something else I was going to ask about as well. How do you pick and choose like which locations to like put your products in?
A lot of that's kind of like a two-pronged sort of thing. There are stores that find me, and then there are times when I find stores.
Yes.
So a lot of that is um when I'm doing the outreach, it is a lot of, again, a research of looking at their Instagrams, looking at um, their websites and things, and to kind of figuring out like, do my products align with their aesthetic and align with the product mix that they already have? Like if they already have a lot of artwork that is, this place-based kind of stuff, I don't necessarily want to compete with that. Like they've already got that niche maybe filled.
Yeah.
But I might reach out and, I might see that like, oh, they've got artwork, but they don't have tea towels, they don't have magnets, they don't have these other kind of souvenir items that people really like. So a lot of that is just kind of gut checking, is the alignment there?
Yes.
Um, And then the other way is stores reaching out to me. And there are like actually kind of like there is Etsy for makers to reach consumers. There's
Mhm.
also online marketplaces for stores to shop to find new brands to carry in
Yeah.
there.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's a lot
And
of how I find stores. And then once you're in a store, you know, the sustainability of the product-based business is really like, are the stores going to be reordering? Are you continuing to
Mhm.
release products that those stores are going to like? And um, yeah, and that will continue to appeal to their customers because their customers are ultimately your customers.
Yeah, and you were kind of talking about that like relationship, like the
Mhm.
sustainability, like you have to kind of develop that. So how do you as a business owner, like how did you develop those relationships like with your wholesalers to like kind of keep it going?
Yeah. So first I want to give a shout out to a couple of like communities that I've been in for product-based businesses. Uh, that I've learned a lot about how to kind of up my game as a supplier for these stores.
Mhm.
I've learned how to just, you know, you've got to make sure that you have the inventory to be able you know, fulfill their orders quickly because we're talking a much higher level of, you know,
Yeah.
products. You know, a person just ordering like one print, one tea towel. These people are, you know, asking for 10 tea towels,
Mhm.
20 stickers, whatever. I'm still pretty small fish ultimately, but I'm not talking Target here. And I don't want to talk Target. That's not my end. Um, but I've learned a lot from some communities that I've been in that
Mhm.
provide a lot of resources for how to kind of be professional. But so a lot of it, I think there's a few stores that I deliver to that I like to just hear from and what they've got going on.
Mhm.
Um, and then there's a lot of thinking through what else is the store going to want to see from me, providing product samples to them, providing display samples for them, lots of kind of things like that. Keeping them abreast of what new products I've got launching, you know, even things like interacting with them on Instagram is
Yeah.
good and nice because they're just people on the other end of that too, right?
Yeah.
They're also running their small businesses.
Yeah, and it was interesting to hear about like I know you touched on like certain local resources that kind of like helped you form that. And I know there are a lot of like local resources in Durham's specifically for business owners. So I wanted to ask you like do you have any like specific organizations that you found like helpful that have helped you?
Triangle Artworks is a great one for artists. It's focused a lot on providing business resources for artists, which
Mhm.
is specific but so important. Like it's not what the artists necessarily know.
Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of the skill set that they need help building up. So that's really great.
Mhm.
Um, I have there's creative meetups and things that are nice. The Durham County Library, the main library, has a small business center. I think if I were kind of in the beginning stages, I would use their resources a lot more to kind of figure out how to set up a business.
Yeah.
Um, but I do love like they've got a co-working space that's really fantastic
Yes.
that I use and love. But yeah, definitely Triangle Artworks has been a really really useful one for me for sure. And the other is there's a resource called this is not local, but it's been really useful for me called Proof to Product that is um, focused on oh on helping businesses wholesale to stores, specifically within kind of the paper product category, which is what my category is. The Flourish Market in Raleigh,
Yeah.
um, they do, yeah. I don't know if you talked to Em before there, but she does. She has had workshop series and retreats and podcasts for product based businesses like mine that have been really helpful too. So those are some that I've tapped into. But I have definitely made it important kind of at every stage of my business to find some community so that I'm just not like completely untethered out here, not knowing if I'm making the right decisions.
Yes, just like you mentioned, community is really important so that you have that like mentors and support to like grow from. And even though there are these like resources available for many business owners, there still are many like challenges along the roadway of running a business. So I wanted to ask you like, what are some of your like biggest challenges that you've had while like running this business?
Oh, I mean, everything is a challenge all the time. And it's just, I mean, a lot of small things, but it is running a business is just relentless work. Not to say that it's not joyful work or rewarding work, but it is relentless work.
Yes.
And some of the challenges that I've had, I mean, oh gosh, there's things like really nuts and boltsy stuff. Like a few weeks ago, my printer broke, and a lot of my business depends on my printer. So I've got to figure out how to respond to that. And kind of slows things down for a couple of weeks. Or my supplier will be out of having supply chain issues, or will raise margin beyond raise their product price. So
Yeah.
I've got to find a new supplier and test new suppliers and things. So there's all kinds of just logistical things that are always happening that I've always got to figure out how to respond to. But beyond that, I think probably the biggest um challenge is there's a lot of maintaining my mental health that I have to proactively do.
Yes.
Um, because running a business alone is, I think, really good for a lot of my skill sets, but it's also very lonely. I can get decision fatigue. I can get burnt out. There's just no one else around that I be like, I don't feel like doing this thing. Can you
Yeah.
do it? There's not I am all the hats all the time. And there's a lot of decision fatigue. There's a lot of time management that makes things tricky. So I've had and there's been moments where I feel like my life is just kind of consumed in maybe an unhealthy way by Paper Mill Creative. And so there's a lot of sort of stopgaps that I've had to build in for myself
Mhm.
to make sure that I'm running this business in a healthy place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Sorry. Did you have anything else to say?
oh no, not really. I think a lot of it is, but I will say things anyway. Um, so I think a lot of it is figuring out good systems, kind of getting to a place where I'm figured out how not to be so overwhelmed by everything that I have to do, kind of focusing on like, okay, there are 3 priorities for today, and that's all we can do. It takes the time that it takes, and I can't feel guilty about that. There's a lot of comparison elements, right? Comparison to you see other businesses, other artists that are so good, so productive, and you're comparing yourself, and you've just got to figure out how to get to a place where you're not feeling bad by comparing yourself to others. There's a lot of those kinds of things that can kind of make me feel not great. So
Um,
I've had to build out systems to make sure that I'm staying healthy mentally.
yes, that's definitely valid. Like just like you said, like comparison is a very real thing, and then it will
Mhm.
take away from like how good that you think you're doing because you're looking at what everybody else is doing. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
And
very
that's,
hard.
yeah. And that's, there's sometimes I am in places where I feel really inspired by other people, and that's a really healthy place to be. And then sometimes I stay on Instagram too long and I'm like, oh no, I'm no good. And that's a really unhealthy place to be. So I've got to, just figure out where that balance is.
Yeah, that's definitely
Yeah.
really important. Yeah. And at the beginning of your answer, you said that running a business, like even through all these problems, like it is like rewarding. So I kind of wanted to like, go back to that aspect. Like, what are your like most favorite or like most rewarding parts that you can think of running like Paper Mill Creative?
Oh, there's so many. Gosh, I think there's the aspect of talking to people. People are so at the center of it, even if I'm, alone in my studio most of the time. It's really focused on people and hearing their responses to the artwork I've created is so great. Like the artwork that I'm making is special for them. And, you know, they're looking at my pieces and they're like, oh, that's where we had our first date. And that's where, you know, it's cool to hear that. Like these are kind of the pieces that I'm making. A lot of them are kind of the stories of where people are living. And so it's the stories of their lives. And that's awesome. They, you know, will tell me when they're taking the artwork to their, you know, family who lives in another country. That's super cool. All kinds of things like that. Um, one of my favorite interactions, there was a botanist who was looking at my native plants piece, and he looks at it and he looks at me and he's like, this is so accurate. And I was like, thank you. That's all I ever wanted to hear from a botanist. Work is accurate. So that was funny. Okay, so there's that aspect, absolutely. Um, and then there's also the aspect of it's really cool to see um a product for the first time, like maybe it's a sticker, a magnet or something, towel or whatever, and I see the product for the first time, and it's just this like cool feeling of like, ooh, that was in my brain and now it's in the world. Like that also always feels really good. And then I mean, just like kind of back end stuff, like two years ago, I was able to finish out this shed as my studio space, and then there was also a point in time where I was like paying myself consistently every month, and now I have like I know how much I'm bringing in every month. Like that was really rewarding as a small business owner, just kind of over time. Not really these. It's not really like a thing immediately, but just like seeing
Growth.
the growth, seeing how the foundations and consistency has made it into something sustainable is a
Yes.
very rewarding thing.
Mhm. I love how your work tells stories. Like that's what you literally said. Like you're telling like the stories of the people who live there. And like to tie it into what you said earlier about like traveling there and doing all this stuff, like I just find it like so cool and so important because like I'm currently at governor's school and I'm here for social science. So
Oh, cool.
we were
Yeah.
talking about we were literally just talking about like history and like how it's like passed down, and we're talking about like history and like how it's important to tell the stories of other people, and like even though this is like not like the typical way like written or like like oral history, like this is still telling the stories of these locations like for people. Like you're kind of like documenting people's history, and they like can buy this and have it and put it up in their house as a way to like remember that history. So I feel like what
Yeah.
you do is really important, and I really like it.
I love that. Yeah, that's what y'all are talking about.
Yeah.
So I love that you said that. Chills. So I kind of got into librarianship through kind of a local history lens. Like that's what I was interested in. And I went in through archives. It's not necessarily what I ended up doing in my
Yes.
career. Um, but that's how I got into librarianship, was through kind of local history archives.
Mhm.
So I feel like that interest just kind of dovetailed with the art that I'm making to do that. But I do love, like, one of the things that I'm trying to do with my artwork is kind of show the layers of the history. Like, yeah, there's, you know, these warehouses in Durham and how how what they've meant to the community and the history that they've been through, the different businesses that they've housed. Like I want to just kind of show that layering of history
Mhm.
within the pieces that I'm making.
Yeah, and
Even
it's showing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that that's what you're getting out of it, because
Mhm.
that's what I'm putting into it for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, and that's really good. Like it's important to have that, and I'm glad that
I
people
think so.
are able to take part in it. I'm happy that it's based in Durham. Like that is such like a win in my eyes. So yeah.
Aw. Yeah, it's been a great place to create this business.
Mhm. All right. And then my very last question for you today was if there's like for anyone watching this who like wants to start a business of like something similar like in art
Yeah.
and also in Durham or maybe not in Durham anywhere else, what advice do you have for them? Like what would you give them?
Yeah. So to my art folks, I think it's important to first recognize that you do not need to monetize your art for your art to have value. There is so much inherent value in the act of creating, and that's so important that you're doing that. But if you do want to monetize your art, I do think that we are in a really great time in human history to be doing that. Like, sure, there's challenges like the Instagram algorithm's not as good as it used to be, and like
Yeah.
AI art is like not my favorite.
Yeah.
Be better than AI art. We can, reach the audience that wants to be reached that is not into AI art just in the same way that we are not into AI art. Um, but beyond, there's always going to be
Yeah.
challenges. But beyond that, like we're in a time where we have so many examples of how to be an artist and making a business out of art. We have access to so many resources of like Skillshare and local, you know, there's local resources. There's people who are going to be interested in mentoring you. I think the cool thing about being an artist and maker, and a thing that I love so much about it, it's a very like rising tide lifts all boats kind of community. Like when my printer broke, I had a couple of art friends who reached out to see if they could help me get some things printed. And it wasn't like, "Ooh, my competition's down." Like, it's not like that, So that's cool. There's so few gatekeepers now between you and reaching the audience that's going to be into your art. Like, sure, it's going to take time to build, but if you're consistent, if you're I'm not out here like looking for moments of like virality. I don't want to go viral. I think that would be a bad thing for my business. But I've like just consistently over time built up an audience that's interested in what I'm doing. There's so few gatekeepers. You don't have to just go to a gallery, although you can, and and hope that a gallery will show you. You can, sell products at markets and wholesale like I do. You can be a muralist. You can take your graphic design skills and, go into branding work. You can do commissions, you can do assignment. There's like so many avenues now and so few gatekeepers now that I think it's a really cool, and so many resources both to help you build a business and to help you be a better artist that are so accessible that I think it's a really great time to be an artist. And I
Yeah.
feel lucky to be living in this moment in time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for everything you had to say, Lori. I really
So
appreciate all your words and you being here. And I'm definitely going to be checking out Paper Mill Creative and checking out like everything that it has to offer and ordering some stickers for myself because I've actually been trying on the hunt to find stickers.
got a few of them.
I'm going to go look for stickers. So thank you so much for all of your words of inspiration and advice and just everything you had to share today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I love talking to you. You're doing a great job with these podcasts. So
Thank you
congratulations
so
on that.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, I'll hear from you soon.
All right. Great to talk to you. Bye.
Bye.
All right, thank you so much for joining us today at Business in the Bowl and watching today's episode. We hope you really enjoyed it. Make sure to follow us on Instagram for more updates and subscribe to our podcast and YouTube. And we will see you in our next episode. Bye.